Chair Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To just follow on a couple of the questions that the chairman had asked, and this is to you, Mr. Javed. The 2.5 gigahertz band, that's just one band there. Are we hearing from tribes or tribal entities that are interested in assessing other bands?
We are. We have seen interest from some tribal entities in licensed spectrum in the 3.5 gigahertz range, and there's one tribe in Oklahoma that has won about 19 of those priority access licenses through the FCC spectrum auction. We also understand that tribes are taking advantage of the unlicensed portion of that band as well as they're designing their systems. And so we are seeing interest in other licensed spectrum opportunities.
Okay. And then Ms. Moino, even though we're talking about tribal access to spectrum, you also issued another report on tribal broadband. And as I mentioned in my opening comments, we've seen some really unprecedented levels of funding that are available to support broadband deployment, use and adoption, and digital equity. Spectrum wireless is just one of the technologies that can help expand broadband services to tribal lands. And I'm just going to note for the committee here, we have behind you, Ms. Moino, we have some folks from Alaska that are following these broadband issues very carefully. Christine O'Connor from the ATA, Bryce Edgman, who is a representative, long-term representative from State House of Representatives, who passed the legislation establishing the broadband office there in the state of Alaska. And so lots of interest, of course, in this. As we look to the funding that is available, all that is happening, this conversation about spectrum, how well are these agencies that all have a piece of this? How well are we coordinating efforts, whether it's from NTIA, USDA, FCC, DOI? Historically, when you got a bunch of agencies, alphabet agencies in this, it's sloppy at best. How are we doing?
Excellent question. I think when we did review all the programs, I think we were surprised to see how many that there actually were, and then all the overlapping. We had a report that showed, these are for deployment, these are for adoption, this is for, all the disparate things that go into broadband deployment. We were really recommending to have a national strategy. Right. I think if you go all the way back to 2010, we had the National Broadband Plan that had awesome recommendations. And now it's time, I think, for a refresh and definitely getting spectrum in there as well. I mean, it's a big part of the solution, especially in rural and remote areas, fixed wireless and other wireless technologies.
So we still don't have that national strategy, is what you're saying?
No.
No. I'm going to ask a question to Mr. Cropley, and to thank you, Chris, for being here. We know in Alaska that there really is no one-size-fits-all solution for broadband, and again, spectrum is just one component of Tlingit-Haida's plans to improve broadband services there in Southeast. So Chris, how are you piecing together the different funding, the federal funding opportunities to improve high-speed internet in Southeast? And can you speak to some of what you would consider to be the obstacles? It's one thing to be able to get funding because there are federal resources that are out there, but for instance, things like permitting, if you can speak to that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And I will keep the thank yous down, but I know I'll miss somebody if I do. We are leveraging the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum in Southeast Alaska. And to have a successful outcome, as you mentioned, we do require funding, and we have been seeking funding through different agencies. And as you know, there's the Alaska plan that looks at $24 billion to provide broadband to all of Alaska. So we could consume a significant portion of the funding that is available nationwide and to provide broadband just to all of us here in Alaska. The 2.5 is one very important piece. As you mentioned, each location is bespoke and requires a tailored solution. What works in Haynes or Sitka maybe doesn't fit for Unifleet or another location. So each community needs to be looked at separately for backhaul and that sort of thing. The 2.5 is uniquely suited to be very friendly in Southeast Alaska, where we do have a lot of foliage and water. It has some technical capabilities that help it overcome some of those challenges. We are able to use the 2.5 to bring broadband to temporary settlements like moose camps, fish camps that are part-time, where we have a lot of residents living on boats. We're able to bring broadband there. And I believe the future of 2.5 is bright with 5G hybrid technologies, leveraging 3.5 and other pieces of spectrum on tribal land that that we have access to. Using LEO as backhaul fiber where we already have it is an important part. We are able to set up mobile towers and move broadband where we need it, when we need it. Some of the funding opportunities exclude mobile towers. I think that one of the biggest challenges I faced, besides the permitting that I'm looking at now, which I will bring up in a second, is how some of the funding, NOFO, the complexities in the NOFOs maybe don't address current industry standard practices when it comes to operational versus capital expenses on subscriptions. Back in the good old days, you would buy a piece of equipment and it would work until it didn't, and now everything requires a subscription. So the operational costs are almost one-to-one on capital, and a lot of these opportunities are capital only. I think the 2.5 is the first step in providing stewardship of all spectrum over tribal lands, which we are required to get consent, and I think that that's something we should consider. If we were to do timber or any other resource on tribal land, there would be some sort of compensation or agreement. I think it's an interesting new problem that we can look at. The permitting is the next issue. We have some 2.5, and it's been challenging with the with all the different entities trying to work together, and what is a tribal entity, and who has, as hopefully everyone knows or gets to know, Alaska is unique when it comes to how tribes are handled. We are not in a reservation system except for our friends down in Metlakatla. And so it creates some confusion, I think, when people are writing legislation or NOFOs when it comes to who is responsible for the land and who is not a tribal entity. Some of the pieces that we're using, ACP is a great program to help us bootstrap, and that we can, again, help with that operational cost and get those who need it most financial support for our program. The NTIA, the specific tribal funding, has been exceptional. It's USDA, their reconnect is great, but it is like having a coupon to the helicopter store. We are not necessarily in the operational position to take advantage of that. And so bringing that back to permitting, if you look at the Forest Service, they are do not look at tribal ISPs like what Clinton Hyde is doing as part of that streamlined permitting process, because we are not an ETC. I think that could use some attention. And the Build Back, I'm sorry if I butchered that, but Buy Back Better America is a bit of a challenge when you're asking the least served. And we're trying to do everything quickly and get everything working. I think good, fast, and cheap. Pick two, to borrow a phrase. So that's I think that's what I have to say about that, and I hope I get an opportunity to talk some more. Thank you very much.